welcome to Game Adventures and Merry Christmas. I'm your casual co-host, Logan Carter, alongside my co-host, Tim Bussey. And aren't we very festive tonight?
Ho, 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 Merry Christmas.
I know. We got all the new decorations up here, thanks to all our sponsors combined, and I think it looks beautiful up here.
Looks like $1 million. I like your...
I really don't like Oklahoma, but, you know, whatever they give us is all right.
I actually wear the sweater still around.
It's quite ugly. I told you to wear an ugly sweater.
You're ugly.
Oh, that's so rude.
I'm sorry.
Well, you know what? Let's just jump into the show then, since you want to make rude comments. Let's jump back into the biggest newsworthy information of the week. The College Football Committee released the Final Four on Sunday, with Alabama at 4, Georgia at 3, Oklahoma at 2, and Clemson at 1. And this is definitely going to be an interesting playoff, but here's the question. A lot of fan bases were upset. And I know Ohio State, Alabama, we'll get into that controversy in the second half with our special guest. And, you know, should there be an 18 playoff? It seems like that's the biggest discussion that's going around college football talk right now. And, you know, a lot of people like Joe Klatt say yes. Guys like Chris Carter say no. What are you feeling, Tim? I know I got something for you, but.
I believe that an 8-game playoff is a no-brainer. And the reason is because it makes no sense to have five teams that you would be that are playoff teams that win their division, win their conferences, and yet you're only picking 4, and even then you didn't pick all of the conference champions this time around. I think you could definitely make a case where you can do an 8-team playoff. You can have the 5 conference champions, and then you add in 3 at-large berths.
It seems like basketball. I mean, they've figured it out. They never have any issues because of the tournament. And I know that's...
Well, I mean, they may have issue who's number 60, what was it, 68 teams, who's number 69, whatever, but really at that point, do they have a shot?
I think it was like Kansas State, Wake Forest last year for the play-in.
Really.
So,
not really a big deal.
But we were at that last game for the Wake Forest to get in.
But conceivably, a top 8, you could find a champion that would necessarily be number 1, 2, 3, or 4. But I think it makes too much sense. I think there's a lot of money to be had in this, and I don't understand what the hesitancy for the college NCAA to not do something of this nature.
Well, I don't know about the money issue, because it also costs a lot to have something like this, and that was one of the arguments that I was going to pose to you. You know, they just laid off 150 people again. ESPN did, and you know they've lost a lot of their games to, you know, Fox Sports has really increased over ESPN, and you know how the playoffs is kind of ESPN's thing on ABC and stuff, but it also costs money, although you get money in return. So it's definitely going to be tough. You know what I mean? Like, it's tough both ways. Yes, they're going to get a lot of money, so they shouldn't be crying. But it also costs a lot of money to, you know, buy all these direct. It's definitely cost-worthy. But the money that they would gain would outweigh the money that they spend.
I'm not crying for ESPN because they're losing analysts. That's not the problem. It's not about ESPN losing analysts. It's not about that. It's a lot of people like me who can't afford $130 for just 2 televisions to have satellite cable. So what we're able to do is we're able to cut the cord, and now we're able to pay $25 a month through, you know, DirecTV Now and some of the things like that. So that's where they're losing money is that way. It's not because of football games being played or anything like that. So that's not the big deal. You can do this and make buku money. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you can play the Meineke whatever bowl, toilet bowl, whatever you want to call it, you can play a much larger bowl and get a lot more eyes on it.
Well, I know you have a little scenario for us, so let's see how much money we can make from.
Well, we would make lots of money.
Scenario. Go ahead.
Please, NCAA, please listen to me.
Yeah, let's hear
here's what I do. If I were doing it, and of course, I think the committee got some things wrong in the first place. If I were doing it, if you look behind me here, you see an 18 playoff, and the way I would look at it is, I know Clemson's number 1 according to what these football guys say.
I know you really like
but
Oklahoma.
What I say, and I'm a football guy who seems to have a lot more common sense than they do, I think Oklahoma is the best team I've seen.
We should switch sweatshirts after the commercial break.
Let's see if I can squeeze into that. But OU would be number 1 in my on my list here. But what I would do is I would take the conference winners. So OU, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, USC, and from there you can figure out which one of these teams you feel like would be the best of those and rank them 1 through 5.
I like how you automatically put the conference champs in that first
Yeah,
5.
I mean, that is a tremendous accomplishment. You are taking away from a conference champion by not allowing them to go further.
Yeah, and also like the fact that you put UCF in there. Like if one of these other not Power 5 conference schools go undefeated, they should automatically be in at least one of them.
And I will say this. I would say the two exceptions would be the AAC and the Mountain West. I don't think the MAC really has a stay in things. Obviously,
who was it?
Like
Central Michigan,
Western Michigan last year. They still didn't have a shot of making it. But you can do that. You would have to. Then you can also take a team like independent team like BYU and Notre Dame, place them into a conference so that they're not left out and they have to get into something. But you want to do that. I think you should do that, and that should be your top 5 teams. And then you have the at-large teams. And that's where you can go for your one-loss teams like the Bamas and the Wisconsins. I mean, they lost by 6 points. So they should have a shot at a national championship too. So in my scenario, your top 5, if I were ranking them, Oklahoma would be number 1, Clemson would be number 2, Georgia would be number 3, Ohio State would be number 4, and USC would be number 5. Now that would be important because instead of going to some neutral site, like you're going to Dallas or you're going to somewhere else, what you do is the top 4 teams would get that would make them the home team, and they get to play at their stadium.
Yeah.
So then if you look behind me here, it makes a lot of sense then. Number 8 would play number 1, so OU versus UCF. Clemson, Wisconsin, so Wisconsin would have to go down to Clemson to play them. And then Bama would play Georgia. That'd be fun because finally you get a true SEC person.
So you wouldn't have these
I think it's ridiculous you have
sites.
no neutral sites. And I think it's ridiculous you have 2 teams in the Final Four from the SEC. That's stupid. But that's another. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then here's where the big one comes: number 4 and number 5, Ohio State, USC. So it's a big difference. Are you going to play at Ohio State for USC, or would Ohio State have to go out to play USC out in
And that
Los
should be
Angeles?
the only toughest decision.
And that should be the toughest decision because after that, 9 and below, you really don't. You could conceivably maybe see an upset, but for the most part, you're picking the 8 best teams, and the best part is you're adding 1 more game. It's not like you're doing anything super special. They're already starting bowl games on the 16th. You could do your first set of playoff games on the 16th, do the Final Four on New Year's Day, which
Would you still have the other bowl games, though?
They have ruined New Year's Day. Can I just say that? They have ruined New Year's Day. New Year's Day used to be the day where all the great teams would play. You would have the Orange, Rose, Fiesta, Cotton, Sugar. You'd have all on the same day, along with 3 or 4 others. It was like football nirvana that day. You sat back,
now
you had a bag
Christmas,
of chips.
No, New Year's Eve now.
It's New Year's Eve. It's this. I mean, Ohio State's playing a major bowl game on the 29th. That's stupid. That's where Mississippi State plays.
Wake plays Texas A&M. I'm going to that game.
Yeah, something like that. Oh, you're going to that game?
Yeah, I am.
Someone had to put a gun to your head and give you tickets?
No. It's perfectly okay. But here's one question before we move on to talking about the other. But do you think expanding the playoff I think it would decrease the urgency of championship weekend. I think it would defeat the whole purpose of championship weekend for people that were already locks. I know you can definitely see where I'm coming from. Like if somebody's already undefeated, you know what I mean? Like it's more urgent that Ohio State needed to win the conference championship this weekend. But if they were already a lock, you know what I mean? It defeats the whole purpose. Like championship weekend is a pretty serious weekend in college football come December. And then it would take away from a team like Auburn or Georgia. Like they have to win this game in order to be in.
No, because I think that unlike the pro game where they'll start sitting people, I think there is still a sense of urgency in the terms of there is still a lot of pride that Ohio State can proudly say they have 37 Big Ten titles. The Big Ten is a very important conference to win. I think you still are going to see people go all guns a-blazing to try to win the Big Ten. Just as the ACC, the SEC, they want to win their conferences. There is not going to be any slack because the moment you do that, then who's to say you can't slack off here and there? I mean, and this gives a little bit lesser of a noose around some people's necks when you have a great team like an Ohio State and a Wisconsin who don't get in at all. Those are 2 great teams who are left out in the cold that should have an opportunity for a playoff. I think it allows you to maybe have a little stumble, and it allows other teams like Ohio State, and we'll talk about this a little bit, who played at Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. Okay.
They played
now they had to
game,
walk an awfully tight rope, and they fell.
They did.
And you give no idea, you give no sense that there can be a little bit of slack here. There's none right now in this current system.
For sure. Well, enough about the playoffs. We'll get into that once our guest Jalen Cohen comes on. But let's talk about the biggest coaching moves over the past 2 weeks, and that begins with Jimbo Fisher, everybody's favorite. And he is now being paid $75 million for 10 years at lovely Aggie Land. And here's what Jimbo had to say about Florida State.
But before I continue, I'd like to say a special thank you to all the players, coaches, and supporters at Florida State University. And a special thank you to Coach Bowden. He gave me an opportunity 11 years ago to come there, and then gave me an opportunity to be a head football coach. And, back then, President T.K. Weatherall and the Board of Trustees had Jim Smith, gave me an opportunity in my life to live a dream and continue a dream that allowed me to come here to Aggieland. And like I say, a special thanks to those two young men and President Thrasher and A.D. Stan Wilcox for all the help and support they gave me during the time at Florida State to be very successful. And beyond success on the field there are important relationships you develop off the field and in those communities. And I always be grateful and thankful the way you treated our family and our time at Florida State. And I wish you all nothing but the best.
And so there he is. He's talking about Florida State. Everybody's crying down there, and they just got Willie Taggart. We can talk about that after we talk about Jimbo. But was this a no-brainer for Fisher to go there, you think? I know a lot of people are upset, and it is a lot of money, first of all. But I know some people are saying, I wouldn't do it, or they don't agree with Jimbo doing it. Like Hobegger, I talked to him, who we had on the show last week. I talked to him last night after the high school basketball game. He was like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like, that's something slime ball of him to do. But if it was me, I mean, $75 million is a lot of money for him and his family.
We also do not know. There's a bunch of situations that hover around Jimbo Fisher, one of which is his personal life. He's divorced. There's some issues there. You also have, he doesn't get along with administration. It's interesting. He's got a divorce. He doesn't get along with administration. Who's the common person here in this?
Yeah, the common factor.
The common factor in this.
Controversies.
So, I would have 75 million reasons why to leave. I think it's a lateral move at best, if anything. I think that you have a better shot of winning in the ACC with Florida State than you do having to run the gauntlet in the SEC West with
He's got a lot
Alabama,
to be building up, yeah.
LSU, Mississippi State. I'm missing someone else in there, but I think that it's definitely a tougher road to hoe for him.
For sure. And so he's 106-83 over 8 years at Florida State, and he was 5-2 in bowl games. But I think the main reason, you could tell from the entire press conference, we didn't play the entire thing, but last year Jimbo complained a lot about the facilities. I don't know if you heard how he was kind of saying they need to be revamped. And throughout his press conference, he just kept naming the different Texas A&M facilities, which I thought was really funny, and I picked up on. He kept saying, over here we have the training facility. It's beautiful. This is beautiful. And I mean, when he got off the plane, the Aggies rolled out a red carpet for him. So, I mean, he's living the life over there, and I think he's going to enjoy it a lot better just because, I mean, that's what he's been asking for. Florida State should have definitely done something to keep him over there, but they didn't put anything out there on the table. They didn't put in any poker chips betting on keeping him. And the Aggies, they went all in on Jimbo. They gave him the huge contract, and they have all these new facilities to offer him.
Well, the times are changing. Today, finally, Tennessee got out of their mess.
Got it.
Which it's kind of funny. They got a defensive coordinator from Alabama who has no proven track record as a head coach, Jeremy Pruitt. So, the UT athletic department is a dumpster fire. And actually, I think if you were to call it dumpster fire, that'd be an insult to dumpster fires. I think
it's definitely worse than what Matt Rule went into at Baylor.
This is a horrible situation. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I think a lot of the UT administration may have been. I think they're very drunk right now. They don't know what they're doing.
And they're miserable.
And then when they wake up in the morning, they're going to really feel bad about themselves about what they've done, because I think this hire is a mediocre hire. They had a much better person in Shiano who actually has coaching experience.
They did.
But they've made this guy out. They made him to look like just the drudge of this world. So he can either turn out to be really good, like a Kirby Smart, or not. But I look here as I look at Florida hired Dan Mullen,
I like
Texas
that
A&M, of course, Jimbo, UCLA, Chip Kelly, FSU. We talk about Willie Taggart in Nebraska. Scott Frost.
Yep. So, yeah, let's get into Scott Frost real fast before we kind of talk about all those coaches. So, continue with the coaching realm. Scott Frost of UCF has decided to continue his career at his alma mater, Nebraska, with a $35 million contract for 7 years. And here's the issue I don't like. I believe coaches need to be allowed to coach their last bowl game, even if they're hired before the game. But either way, here's what Frost had to say after the AAC championship game.
They should give you time after the season to make decisions, and they don't. You know, these things happen at the wrong time. And the one thing I wasn't going to do is sacrifice my commitment to this team. So I've been game planning, I've been coaching, doing the best that I can for these guys, and then decisions land on you, and they're hard decisions.
Now, right there you see Scott Frost. I mean, literally tears about to come in his eyes, and his quarterback, Mackenzie Milton's about to tear up. I mean, what I didn't like, I was watching the game. I mean, they were still going into overtime, and the commentators come on and say, oh, we just got a first report from so-and-so of ESPN, and we've already confirmed that he's going to Nebraska. I'm not even a UCF fan, and I'm sitting there watching. If you are a UCF fan, how can you even be happy about the rest of the game because you just lost somebody that took your team 12-0? I thought it was highly unprofessional what they did. I think he should have had the opportunity to tell his team first about the move and tell the fan base in that press conference would have been the great scenario for him to do. But, I mean, he's a totally complete person. I know if you see that picture back there, he was all, like, brushed up in that UCF press conference. And then, I mean, clean cut. I mean, it's like he's never even coached at UCF at the Nebraska press conference. Sure. But do you like the way the NCAA is handling the, you know, the coaching carousel, like where that he can't go and coach his bowl against Auburn?
Yeah, because, you know, as we said last week, maybe that's in the past now.
It is in the past.
This is his future, and this is what he's got to make his hay in. He's got to now win the Big Ten. You know, he's won the AAC, and that's a tremendous deal for him. But now he's got to move on and do something. But now, if he was coaching for a national championship, everything would be held up. Of course, if he's coaching for a national championship, he probably wouldn't even be leaving.
But this is still a big game. This is a game that, you know, Nebraska is hard to recruit. First of all, I talked to one of the professors here at High Point, Bobby Hayes, and he said, Nebraska, hey, that's pretty tough to, you know, get some players.
Well, here's how it wasn't.
He's in a great position.
Here's how
right
it
now.
wasn't. Here at one point when Nebraska was in the Big 12, Big 8. I'm old enough to remember
that was a different
Big 8.
Yeah.
It was different because they could swoop down into Texas and do a lot of recruiting. Well, a lot of Texas people aren't concerned about the Big Ten where they're at now, and so to try to recruit a kid from Texas up to Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, is quite a task. So
they used to
model,
be good back in the day.
Yeah, I remember
they were like
that.
Iowa, like how Iowa is now. You know, 1 year they're there, 1 year they're not. Like they're kind of like how Iowa was this year, like beating a couple big teams, and then you know it's just.
But no, Nebraska in the 70s, 80s, 90s, they were running through people, buzzing through people.
They were.
But they were. It'll be an interesting thing to see. He's young. He's got a lot of energy. Guys, Riley, he was 64 years old, and he couldn't have looked any more dead on a sideline. So to have a lot of new blood, I'll be interested. I think they've carried over the defensive coordinator, which he's getting free money because that guy should be out finding a job over at Kroger.
Oh gosh.
But anyway, if I look through here, I'll just say this real fast. I think of all of the ones that we talked about, I would definitely look at Scott Frost. I think he was the best hire.
You really like that one?
I really like that one. I thought that when Florida kept going down the Chip Kelly, I kept thinking to myself, go for Scott Frost. He was the offensive coordinator. Go for him. He's younger, more hungry. I would and less baggage. But
I'll make my pick real fast before we move on to the last segment. I really like the Willie Taggart. I know I said it on the show last time. I said, you got to watch out for Willie Taggart. He's still looking, even though he's in the Pac-12 at Oregon. I think once Francois comes back from injury, they're going to be a team to reckon with in the ACC because he had Justin Herbert and Royce Freeman at Oregon. And, I mean, they were pretty good this season until Justin Herbert got injured. And he's a lot like Francois. And now he's got Francois, Cam Akers. And I think Florida State's going to be a pretty good team next season. So Jimbo kind of left somewhere that, they're going to be – they had high dreams at the beginning of the season against Alabama. And, I mean, it's the same team, basically. I think they're losing a couple defensive players, but you're getting a lot back out of Willie Taggart. Mm-hmm. But before we wrap up the rest of this half of the show, the Heisman finalists were announced Monday night with Lamar Jackson, who has just 3,489 and 25 touchdowns this year. I know. And then you have Baker Mayfield coming back with 4,340 yards and 41 touchdowns. And then finally you have Bryce Love.
Not winning it.
Who has 1,973 yards and 17 touchdowns. So clearly you already think Baker Mayfield.
I made my pick.
You made your pick.
Quick, yes.
So you think Baker Mayfield is in the Heisman
Baker
house.
Mayfield's, lock, stock, barrel.
Even if, what if he goes out there and loses to Georgia?
It doesn't matter. They do the
that
Heisman
is a Saturday
this week.
Night, but
they're going to go into a crystal ball. Wait a minute, he's going to lose. Sorry, we're going to draw it back.
But do you think he could, since we're not going to talk about the Oklahoma-Georgia game, do you think he can fend off Georgia's defense that took down Stidham this past weekend?
I think.
You're really high on Oklahoma. You think they're going to win the whole thing?
I saw them front and center. I saw what they can do.
I know,
and it can be devastating.
You saw him stab the flag into the middle of the field.
I don't like it.
I think Lamar's got to make some room for another twin-side bed in the
Lamar,
house.
Enjoy your free trip up to New York City. Bryce Love, I love you. Enjoy your free trip.
Can I say something about Bryce Love?
No,
real quick.
Yeah, you're the
I know
host.
You didn't watch USC versus Stanford, but boy, they really give him a beating. Like, I was actually very concerned. Like, this guy had like gashes inside his leg and limping, and I was like, why are you still sending him in there?
You know why? Because he's a football player. That's what they do. He'd know mamby-pamby.
I know, but they're
I don't know what a mamby-pamby
we're trying to avoid all these other injuries and stuff. But when we returned, local high school basketball star Jalen Cone joined the show. So if you're listening to us, make sure to stay with us. And if you're on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like button as well. Click on over to that other video so you can see that interview that we have with him. We will be right back.